Hello everyone, welcome back to Web Design and Development. I want to take just a few minutes and show you some resources that are on the class website that go with this tutorial. So if you go to the class website, click on the link for tutorials. You're going to get this little page here. You want to go to CSS layout. That's what we're talking about today. So CSS layout. And then the last thing I want you to click on is this little link right here that says Quick Reference Know Your CSS. This is the link that we're going to use with this tutorial. So first thing I want to do is kind of walk you through the box model. So on this page, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see this graphic right here. I'm just going to click on this, bring it up full size, and let me talk a little bit about what the box model is. Essentially, what we're talking about is every element that we're working with in HTML lives inside of a box. And we can also build boxes to put those elements inside of. The box that's on the most interior is the content itself. We call that the content box. The next box out is padding. Okay, so if we need to move something away from the edges of its box, we're going to put padding in there. There is a border box, and the border box can be configured with styles. So we can make a solid border or a dotted border. We can make the border thick, we can make the border thin, we can turn the border off so you don't see it. We also have a margin box which sits outside of this. And each one of these boxes is kind of a handle that lets us do some more advanced things with the content. So we can do things like put in a background image or set color or set some global characteristics that are going to apply to that box. Okay, so that's the box model. We have these boxes inside boxes. There is another box which is called the outline box. You don't see that so often because there's some cross-browser issues, but these are the ones that are most commonly configured. Okay, let's take a little closer look at this. I'm going to kind of go down from the box model. I want to talk again about these characteristics that are common to all of the boxes. I haven't given you all of the details here, but I've given you enough that you can kind of get an idea of what's possible, and you can look up the rest. At the top of each section, there's a little orange link here. That's going to go over to the W3C website. If I click on that, that's going to open that up. And this is the whole enchilada. This is all of the possibilities and how they work. So you can come through this and check this out. We'll close that down. So border. The border box has some characteristics, and there's some new stuff in CSS3. So the commonly used ones are things like width. Width could be in pixels or percentages. The border color. If you use the short form of hexadecimal here, you can use either the short or the long. And the border style, there's a lot of different styles you can use. And you can also set the borders for just one of the borders. So that, for example, if I just want to style the left border, I use border-left-style. You need to have this little colon here, and then what the characteristic is, and then we end the statement with a semicolon. So for example, some of the possibilities for border styles are here. So you can have a dotted border, or a double border, or a solid border. Now in CSS3 we have the ability to make rounded corners. That's what border radius is about, is we're rounding the corners on that. And I do just want to kind of review the order of what you're seeing here. I think of this as the terrible convention, and it's not because it's terrible, but because that's a good word to help you remember what this convention is about, which is TRBL. So this is top, right, bottom, left. So kind of like the word terrible. So each of these percentages is controlling one of those corners. Now, one more characteristic I want to give you here is something called the box shadow. Okay, this is considered a border style, even though it begins with box instead of border. This is for putting a little drop shadow on a box. And again, you're going to give the characteristics of how wide that shadow is, and then also the color. This is a kind of a medium gray, which is typical for a drop shadow. But a drop shadow could be any color that you want. It doesn't have to be gray. Now let's talk a little bit about margin properties. Okay, so I've given you some variations here with margins. If you only see one number, it's going to have the same margin on all four sides. So if there's just one number here, that means there's 50 pixels on all four sides. Again, if you see four numbers, that's that terrible convention TRBL. If you see two numbers, what you're seeing here is top and bottom, and then left and right. Now, padding works largely the same way. You're going to see the same options. And again, you can do just one side. You can do this with margins, and you can do this with borders. So if I just want to do the left padding at 10 pixels, then I have that option. I can set it that way. Now the last thing that's very common to pretty much all boxes is backgrounds. We see backgrounds quite a lot. So I want to introduce you to some of the background properties. And again, reminder, these orange links go to the full list. So this is just a short form of what's available. But very common things we do with the backgrounds of these boxes is put a color in. We might put a graphic in. We might tell it to repeat or to not repeat in some cases. We might say repeat but only in the X direction. The X direction is horizontally. Or we can say repeat but only repeat in the Y direction. The Y direction is vertically. There's also a short form for this where we can put this all together. As long as you have things in the right order, you can leave some of these out or pour more of them in. But the order that I've given you, at least for the common characteristics, is color, the URL, and then whether or not it repeats. Now with CSS3, we get a couple of new things. With CSS3, we have the ability to set the size of the background, and then we also have the ability to pin the background to different boxes. So sometimes we don't want it to start in exactly the same place. So the background origin can be pinned to the border box, to the padding box, or to the content box. And again, if you're unsure how to use that, click on these links and that'll give you the full text on that. All right, let's take a look at these boxes in context. Over here on the right, I've written a very simple little HTML page that has some of the more common boxes and uses the HTML5 codes that we talked about in class. The first thing I want you to pay attention to is up here at the top. This is document type that's up here. Document type is something that tells the computer which version of HTML this document was created with or which standard it conforms to. In HTML5, it's a fairly simple declaration. We just say doc type HTML, like that. Let's kind of go down through this. The next thing I want you to pay attention to is this little link right here. This is what's going to connect the style sheet, that's this document over here on the left, to this HTML page. So as the computer reads through these lines, when it gets to this line right here, it's going to go look up the style sheet and get all of those characteristics. I'm going to go down a little bit further, and I wanted to introduce the div tag. Div is for divisions. This is how we made all of the boxes up until CSS3. Okay, so in CSS3, HTML5, we got some new stuff. But up until then, we just used div for everything. Because we had a lot of divs, we needed to label them in some way, and that's what ID does. Just as a reminder, with IDs, you get one per page on the document. When you're working with classes, you can have more than one. So that's the primary difference between those two. Over here on my style sheet, I'm going to kind of walk through this a little bit. At the top, right here, I have an HTML tag, I have a margin and padding, and I've added a background color here so that when we look at this document, you can see the different areas. And the background color for the areas that HTML tag is controlling is 000 or black. On the body tag, I've got several characteristics here, but there's one that I want to give some special attention to, which is this text align right here. I've done some things with the margin up right here, the 50 pixels and the auto, and this declaration is going to center things left and right in the window, so that it's going to be top and bottom 50 pixels, left and right automatic. Okay, so that's going to center that in the window. However, there are some older versions of Internet Explorer that don't understand that. So that's what this text align is for, is to help those older versions understand how to center things horizontally in the window. So we're going to come down a little bit further, We have the declaration container. So that's the same as what's in our div. This is what the ID is connecting to. When we use an ID, we use the pound sign to connect that. So the pound sign that's right there is what's going to connect that to the ID indicator. Some of the more common characteristics are width, margin, and padding. Remember, margin and padding are boxes. Also border declarations. We can have a lot of characteristics with borders. In this particular case, we have a border with a solid line around it that's 2 pixels wide and is a dark blue. That's what those declarations are talking about. There's one other little thing to pay attention to in this declaration, which is the text align has been reset to left. Again, that's because of that little trick that we did to help Internet Explorer out in the previous tag. Now, over here on the right, we have a couple of new tags. These are new to HTML5. The first one is header. Before that, we would have used div, maybe with an ID of header. We now actually have a header tag. We also have a section tag, so we're going to be looking at that. And I've put the section inside of a division called the center content. So this is my left column section right here, and there's a right column section a little further down. You may notice that between this div and this section, this one is an ID and this one is a class. So let's talk about what a class is. If I go down through my style sheet a little bit, I'm going to go through header, have those characteristics. I'm going through my ID center content, and that looks pretty much the same as what we've looked at. And then right here at left column, this is where we get our first class. Classes look a lot like IDs, but instead of a pound sign, we use a period symbol. So we're going to use a dot or a period symbol to connect those together. So this dot right here is connecting over to this class name, class equals left column. Okay. So again, we've given this some characteristics. All of these we've seen before, except this one right here that I'm going to talk about in just a sec. So we have our width set at 150 pixels. We have our margin set at 25 pixels. We have padding set at 25 pixels. And I've given these some background colors so that you can see the final result a little more clearly. So let's go down on this side a little bit. And I'm going to just kind of focus on the sections for just a minute. Again, section is an HTML5 designation. That's one of the new tags that we're working with. I want you to notice right here in the middle of the left section, there's one more new tag right here, which is called nav. This one right here. Nav is important for disability readers. This is a designation outlining where the major navigation elements for the page are. So things that are really important to the navigation scheme should be wrapped in a nav tag. So let's go down a little bit further. In our HTML, we have another section. This section is called right column, and we'll kind of come over here on the style sheet side of the house. And I'm going to post these documents up to the class website so you can download them and study them and kind of learn how they are put together. With the left column, I have it floating left, and with the right column, I have it floating right. And what this float designation does is technically it takes it out of the document flow. It's breaking up the flow of the document. But from a practical point of view, what this does is that lets me put the left column and the right column side by side. That's what that floating is letting me do. When it floats left, it's going to line up against the left margin. When it floats right, it's going to line up against the right margin, where you're going to see that. Go down a little further. We only have one more little tag here that I want to show you. This is the footer tag over here on the HTML side of the page. Again, footer is a new HTML5 tag. Before that, we would have just used a div, maybe with the ID of footer. So I'm going to come down here and we'll take a look at footer. Footer again has a width, a margin, padding, and a background color. And then it has something new as well. It has clear. Clear is related to those floats that happened in the previous two boxes. In this case, I want the footer to stretch all the way across, both of those boxes. And to do that, I have to do what's called clearing the floats. So this clear designation with both is clearing both the left float and the right float. Okay. And then just a final reminder, at the very bottom of this document, I've put a little comment in here. You may notice that comment tags in CSS are slightly different than comment tags in HTML. This is an HTML comment tag over here. In CSS, we use more of a programming designation for comment tags. But I put that again, that terrible convention, TRBL, top right, bottom left. Help you remember that just a little bit. Okay, so just as a reminder, I am going to post these two documents up to the class website so you can download them for your own reference and kind of, see how the syntax works and how these are put together. I just want to show you what this looks like with the code that we have here. I'm going to open this up, and we can see we have this black area that's being controlled again by the HTML tag. This area back here that's kind of blue, that's being controlled by the body tag. And then my container is right here. That's starting to control the content areas. So that's bringing that styling in, kind of giving us those colors. There is a tool in Firefox. You go to Tools, Web Developer, there's something called an inspector. And this is very useful when you're working with style sheets, because sometimes with style sheets, when you get boxes inside of boxes, you're not entirely sure what's controlling what. So with the inspector, I can click on that, and what that does is it shows me the elements and it shows me the boxes that are associated with those elements. Okay, so as I move this around the page, it's showing me what's being controlled by what part of the style sheet. So again, here's my right column. That's an H2. If I come here, that's my center content div. And there's my H1. And that's very useful for debugging. So as we start working with this information, we can take that apart and figure out what's going on with the style sheet. So again, that is found in Firefox under Tools, Web Developer, Inspector. Okay. Well, I hope this tutorial has been helpful for you, and I wish you good luck with your first style sheet. And if you have any questions, please come see me in class.